Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the topic of nutrition in plant-based meat and fish analogues. Before we begin, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out of your day to join us on what is our second ever webinar. So I hope you enjoy it and I hope you all take something from this. My name is Rob Lambert and I head up marketing and communications here at Ulrick and I'll be hosting you for the duration of the webinar. With me on this webinar is my colleague and Ulrick & Short's R&D manager, Danny Schroeter.
Good morning, everyone.
So the next 30 minutes, we're going to be looking at three main areas. First of all, we're going to be looking at why plant-based foods, why nutrition in plant-based foods and plant-based analogues more specifically is so important and such a driving factor. Secondly, we're going to be looking at health thematically, breaking it down into a couple of key themes and approaching it from a couple of different angles. And thirdly, we'll be looking at some worked examples and concepts to show you the type of reformulation which is possible. So first off, just a bit of housekeeping. So throughout the webinar, we'll be putting up a couple of polls, as well to keep you on your toes, as well as some scannable QR codes for some useful downloadable resources for you guys. So you may wish to have your phones at the ready to scan them. We do have a question and answer function throughout the webinar. Although due to the really high number of people that have joined and also the time constraints we have, we won't be answering these live. Although if you do have a question, please feel free to pop it in the question and answer function. My colleague Martha is on the other end of that and we'll pick that up with you following the webinar. Alternatively, there's some contact details at the end if you want to email us or call us directly. And finally, you'll all be receiving a recording of the webinar following this, as well as a copy of all the downloadable resources. So please don't feel like you have to quickly scribble notes or screenshot anything if there's anything of interest. So firstly, what I'll do for the benefit of you who aren't familiar with Ulrick & Short is I'll just give you a very quick overview. So we, Ulrick & Short, are designers and suppliers of clean label plant-based functional ingredients. By clean label, I mean we only extract the natural functionality from crops using proprietary knowledge and physical production methods. So there's absolutely zero chemical processing whatsoever. And as a result, all of our products carry a very clean and consumer-friendly back-of-pack declaration. We have four main product types. So we have functional starches, flours, fibers, and proteins. And all of these, as we said, are highly functional. They're not bulk ingredients, and they're all designed to do a very specific job in food and solve a specific challenge within this particular application. In the context of meat and fish analogues, this could be a variety of things, such as binding, texture control, and nutritional improvements, which we will come on to. So what we'll do is I want to dive into exactly why nutrition is such a hot topic in the plant-based analog sector. But before we do, I'd like to get everybody's opinion. So plant-based analogues are often portrayed and often positioned as a healthy alternative to their meat and fish equivalents. But what is your opinion? So what I'll do is I'll just quickly launch this poll here. So this is relating specifically to plant-based analogues, meat and fish analogues, not plant-based diets in general. But do you think they are as healthy, they are healthier, or they are less healthy than their meat and fish, more conventional counterparts? This is great. Thank you all. There's absolutely loads of engagement. So thank you all very much for this. I'll just leave it a couple more seconds. And that's great. So quickly share these results with you. Okay, so that's really interesting. So generally speaking, we've got a bias towards either impartiality or actually disagree or strongly disagree. And that's quite interesting because this actually mirrors what the broader consumer public think as well, which we'll come on to just now. So thank you all for your engagement there. That's absolutely fantastic. So why is nutrition such a hot topic in the plant-based analog sector? So whenever we look at opinion polls, whenever we do any customer survey, look at any customer survey data, there are three main factors as to what is driving the plant-based sector, and the plant-based analog sector more specifically. The third most potent factor, if you will, is diet variation. Consumers are looking for new eating experiences and looking for new ingredients, especially specific consumer demographics. Secondly, it's sustainability and environmental concerns. So these are really growing, again, especially among certain demographics. And it's why we see this reflected in packaging. So carbon labeling is very much growing quite considerably, but also things like a focus on ingredient provenance as well. So this is a real driver. But by far and away, health is the biggest single driver. So why have we put this as the biggest single driver? Well, quite simply, health has a universal appeal to consumers. So it doesn't appeal to those who are just concerned with the ethical considerations around meat eating or the environmental implications of consuming animal products. Instead, it covers all consumers. And the data backs this up. So 53% of consumers say they opt for plant-based diets or opt for plant-based analogues as a result of health concerns. So it is the single biggest purchasing factor amongst consumers. Additionally, there's some contemporary sort of pressing issues which force this even more. So firstly, if we look at obesity, generally obesity is an increasing consumer concern, particularly in the UK. So 72% of UK consumers say they're actively trying to reduce their consumption of fat, sugar, and salt. There's also additional things. Obesity is very much in the media at the moment. You have initiatives such as the National Obesity Strategy outlined about 18 months ago by Henry Dimbleby. So there's a lot of talk generally within the country about obesity. And this has very much been precipitated in the last 24 months by COVID-19. It's really emphasized the focus on health, as obesity is the single biggest risk factor for severe COVID-19. And the final point is really relating to sort of pressure from above, so legislative and governmental pressure. So as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, there's some new regulations coming in October, HFSS regulations. If anyone wants to know more about that, I recommend you watch our previous webinar. But effectively, this effectively covers rates products based on their saturated fat content, calorie content, sodium content, and sugar content, and imposes certain restrictions on products which it considers high in these macronutrients. So although the plant-based analog sector is the remit of this legislation, it doesn't cover plant-based analog sectors as of yet. If your product is used as an ingredient in a ready meal, for instance, it is a consideration. But also generally, these regulations have very much focused retailers on looking at health and improving the health of their products as well. So this is more of a consideration at every level, whether it's consumer, retailer, or manufacturer. So when we look at health, we find it useful to break it down into a couple of key themes, a couple of which Danny will explore in a bit more detail in a few minutes. But broadly speaking, when we look at health, we break it down to three key themes. So the first one we'll coin and we'll consider as reductionism. So this is probably the most obvious way in which you can improve nutritional profiles. So this relates to reduction of salts, calories, sugar, and fats. Now, traditionally, this was not a concern so much within the plant-based analog sector because it was usually lower in saturated fat and calorie content. But as the sector has progressed, this is more and more of a consideration. The use of hard fats to obtain certain textures within certain products has significantly increased the levels of saturated fat and calories within some products. And generally speaking, salt content is quite high within the sector. So this isn't something which we'll focus on specifically in this webinar, but if it is something of interest to you, please do get in touch, because we do have some solutions for this. The second thing that we like to look at is what we'll call as naturalism. So naturalism refers to clean label more generally, but also just generally clean back of pack on consumer-friendly back of pack declarations. And this is probably the biggest contradiction within the sector. So what you have is a sector which positions itself often as a healthier alternative to meat and fish, yet the back of pack declarations, ingredient declarations, many of them used in products are often not perceived in a particularly positive light by a lot of consumers. So this is a really significant challenge that the sector needs to address. And again, Danny will be coming onto this in a bit more detail slightly later. And the third theme is really kind of a step on from the other two. So functionalism. So this is additional functional benefit within food. So in the case of analogues, this could be anything from protein and fiber fortification, but it also could be matching the nutritional profiles of meat and fish products. For instance, looking at amino acid profiles and supplementation of things like omega-3 in fish analogues. So this extra level of sophistication is what consumers, and specifically certain demographics, have come to expect. So what do consumers actually think of plant-based diets? So broadly speaking, consumers have a really quite positive attitude towards plant-based diets as a whole. As you can see here, most believe that plant-based diets are healthy and natural. But this interestingly contrasts really, really heavily with the statistic that 65% of consumers believe meat and fish analogues are in fact overprocessed and are perceived as unnatural by a lot of consumers. And this seems to be one of the biggest challenges in the sector to preventing it growing even faster than it is at the moment. And this very much links to general perceptions of back of pack of ingredient declarations back of pack. So very often ingredients used in plant and fish meat and fish analog products contain chemically modified or additional preservatives, stabilizers, or thickeners. And broadly speaking, whenever we look at consumer data, the acceptance and favorability ratings of these types of products is very, very low. And this is very much a collective challenge for the whole industry. And what I'll do now, this is a very nice way. I'll pass you on to Danny, who'll explore this theme in a bit more detail. But again, just before I do that, what I'd like to do is very similarly to what we did with getting your opinion on health. Do you guys believe that meat and fish analog products are as natural, more natural, or less natural than their meat and fish equivalents? I.e., is a plant-based burger as natural as a meat burger, or the sausage products, etc., etc.? This is great. This is, yeah, some really, really good engagement here. Thank you very much, everyone. So I'll just quickly end this poll and share these results. So again, that's really interesting. We have a bit more of a spread here. So we have some people who really strongly agree with this. But again, generally speaking, we have a bias towards disagree, which again kind of backs up what consumers at large also perceive. So what I'll do now is I'll pass you on to Danny, who will explore this in a bit more detail.
Perfect. Thank you, Rob. So I'm going to begin by speaking a little bit more about naturalism and how this is evolving within the plant-based meat alternative sector. So as Rob has spoken about, there are a number of reasons why people will choose a plant-based diet, with health being cited as a key deciding factor. As happened in the past with gluten-free products, for example, the first steps in development have been creating products which functionally match those of their meat and fish counterparts in terms of visuals, taste, and texture. So as our understanding as an industry grows around how to create these products and the processing and ingredient technology develops, there is room and an increasing demand for how these products can be improved nutritionally. So one key trend we're seeing is a move towards cleaning up the back of pack and looking for cleaner functioning ingredients. So on the screen now is a typical declaration for a plant-based meat alternative product. And as you can see, there are a number of non-clean functional ingredients used here. So these are used for a number of reasons, from color and flavor to stabilizing and texturizing. When looking at how we might be able to replace or remove these ingredients, we look at the functionality which they bring to a product and work to understand how these functionalities might be able to be replaced. So here are 3 functional ingredients which you will often see on the back of pack for plant-based analogues. So what I'll do is I'll quickly talk through what each one of these does and why they're so difficult to replace. So firstly, we've got methocel, and this is used because of its unique functionality in relation to reversible thermodulation, and it works in the opposite way around from other hydrocolloids and starches, in that it will firm up when hot and soften when cool. So this is crucial for many products to help with processing, and in plant-based alternatives, it helps to give the firmer bite and help with the final eat of a product. Secondly, we've got konjac. So this is used as a thickening, binding and stabilizing agent, and is used in some plant-based fish alternatives alongside calcium carbonate to give a firm gel. So the repeating polysaccharide chain interacts in the alkali conditions created from using alongside calcium carbonate. And then when heated, it gives a strong elastic gel, which resists melting even under high temperatures after it's had a chance to cool and set. The third product is carrageenan. So there are a number of types of carrageenan available, and these are all derived from seaweed. So kappa carrageenan is often used for its melt in the mouth sensation, and these melting characteristics is what also makes it very good for vegan cheese. So it forms a clean and brittle gel, and this helps with processes such as grating of plant-based cheeses. So as previously mentioned, they're really unique ingredients, and our approach is to understand why these ingredients are used, make sure that they're needed in that application, and then to understand the compromise if they're taken out. So we're happy to advise and give our experience during the development for how these work, and then how they also work alongside our clean label ingredients to help either complement them or to replace them if possible. So I'm now going to go on and speak about functionalism. So as Rob previously said, this is looking at adding ingredients in rather than removing them. So to improve the health of a product by adding in additional products. So the reason why this is such an area of focus is that 93% of consumers are looking to have products which are nutritionally the same or similar to their animal-based equivalent. So let's have a look at what that involves and where the market is currently regarding functionalism. So on the screen now is the nutritional profile for a plant-based smoked salmon. And now there is the nutritional profile for a regular smoked salmon, so you can see side by side how they compare. So when focusing on comparing carbohydrates, sugars, protein, and omega-3 levels, the plant-based salmon has virtually no protein or omega-3, but is much higher in carbohydrates and sugar. So the risk of making products look, taste, and feel like their fish and meat counterparts that they're trying to mimic is that consumers may assume that they will contribute the same or similar nutritional value too, as certain colors, tastes, and textures conjure up a particular eating experience. Okay, so that's looking at the macronutrient comparison between regular and plant-based smoked salmon. But this is something which can fairly easily be looked at on the back of pack if someone has enough basic understanding of food. But how about when we look at the contribution of other health factors, such as amino acids? So this takes a greater level of understanding to know if what you're picking up is nutritionally comparable. So on the screen now is a table with 9 essential amino acids, which can't be made in the body, and of course need to be ingested in the food that we eat. So as you can see here, most plant-based proteins don't contain all 9 essential amino acids at the required levels. we've included the levels needed to reach a complete protein status on the left, and then highlighted in red where a crop is deficient in a particular amino acid. Again, just zooming in a little bit more so you can see a bit more clearly that the amino acids which are deficient is not the same for every crop. So we would use a combination of plant proteins to give that complete set. And we would typically use a combination of pea and rice protein, a ratio of 70-30. And this is because pea is deficient in methionine, but rich in lysine, which is the opposite for rice protein. So as a combination, they work really nicely together. There's a QR code on the screen now. And if you were at our previous webinar, you'd be familiar with this. So if you just scan this, this will take you to a downloadable version of this table, which you can then refer back to after this webinar. But as with the webinar itself, we can send this to you afterwards, so you've got a reference. And finally, I'm going to speak about micronutrients. So this is the other key area which is addressed when developing, which needs to be addressed, sorry, when developing plant-based meat and fish alternatives. So some fish is naturally high in certain micronutrients, such as omega-3, and though it is possible to get this from plant-based sources such as seasoned oils, it's not always in the meat alternatives. So iron and zinc is also possible to get from beans and whole grains and dark leafy vegetables. And then vitamin B12 is a little harder to get naturally from other sources when eating plant-based, but it quite often is taken as a supplement. But this all assumes that people will know that they need to be complementing plant-based meat alternatives with other foods high in these micronutrients. So what does this all mean practically? How can we develop products which look and taste like meat, but which also give us the nutrients which we need from these type of products? I'm going to talk through a couple of concepts which we've been working on internally to demonstrate how we can use our ingredients to improve the nutritional profile of products by either removing ingredients or adding health boosting ones in. So first, I'll speak through our plant-based burger concept. So this uses a texture pea protein alongside one of our rice proteins to give the functionality, so the binding and the meat texture that you would expect with a burger. And as well as giving the functionality in terms of how you taste the product, it also improves the nutritional profile by allowing for the burger to have a complete amino acid profile. So we've also included Delight F, a tapioca starch, and this gets as a succulence into the product without needing additional fat to be added in. And then we've got Cilia PF50, a pea fiber in there, and this is used for binding and increasing fiber content. So you can see on here that we've also used Methocel in this application, and as spoken about before, it firms up when hot and complements other ingredients in there to give the required final eat texture that you would expect. So making sure that anything that's in there is in there for a reason and understanding what it's doing. So just to summarize, the plant-based burger concept, it gives us a complete amino acid profile by combining the pea and rice proteins at the 70-30 ratio, which I spoke about before. It gives a high in protein claim and a source of fiber claim, which is something in addition to what a normal standard beef burger would have. The second concept is a plant-based calamari. So this concept is using a combination of Synergy P and Cilia PF50 alongside the konjac and Methocel, and this builds up the typical firm gelatinous texture of calamari, while also giving the mouthfeel bite and binding for this type of product. So by using our pea starch alongside other strong gelling agents, we're able to keep the saturated fats low while maintaining the structure and mouthfeel of the product. We've also been able to reach a source of fiber claim by using our pea fiber to bind the product in the hot and the cold. So that concludes my final points on developing more nutritionally complete plant-based alternative products. So if you want any more information on any of the concepts we've spoken about today, or you would like any help or advice on developing your own concepts, Rob will be closing off now with the best way to get in touch. Thank you for your time this morning, and speak soon.
Thank you very much for that, Danny. That's great. Thank you. So as Danny said, this concludes this really short webinar. We hope it's been informative, and we hope we've given you some interesting ideas on some reformulation ideas. If you do have any questions, or if you're interested in any of the concepts or reformulation strategies that we've been through, I can see a couple of people have already put some questions in. Please feel free to pop it in the Q&A section. As I said, we'll leave the webinar open for a few minutes, and we'll respond to those. Alternatively, on the details below, please feel free to get in touch. Or if you're an existing customer, please feel free to get in touch with your account manager. And the last thing to say is thank you very much for your time. And we hope to see you on our next webinar, which will focus on the functional alternatives to maize and wheat starch, which is in response to current supply chain issues in the industry. So we hope to see you all soon. Thank you very much. Bye.